All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good buddy Tim Karr. Tim is the campaign director for Free Press, which you can find at freepress.net. You can also follow him on Twitter at Tim Karr. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Well, I'm doing all right at the moment, Tim. I'm hoping, in the days and weeks to come that my show all of a sudden doesn't stop working on certain people's internet connections or something like that. I'm a little worried about the overall situation here. So most people heard, Tim, last week a federal appeals court in the case of Verizon versus the FCC. The federal appeals court struck down net neutrality. Let's begin with your reaction to the court ruling.
Well, it was not a surprise, although you're absolutely right. We now are living in an internet era, which actually began with this court decision whereby internet service providers, companies like AT&T and Verizon, can shut down access to a website or a streaming radio show such as yours without there being any legal recourse or any way for you or I to stop them. So this is a very disturbing decision, although it was not completely unexpected because what they were ruling on was called the Open Internet Order, which was something that the former FCC chairman, Julius Janikowski, had concocted, and he did a really poor job of creating this rule. He built it on a faulty legal foundation. So a lot of we protested the rule when it first came out, and a lot of the sort of insiders and wonks and legal scholars knew that it would not withstand a court challenge such as this. So when the decision came down on Tuesday, and when the court decided that the Federal Communications Commission didn't structure its authority properly to protect net neutrality, a lot of us were not surprised.
No, and even more so, I remember when you were on the show a year ago, us talking about it, and you were like, "Yeah, it's going to get struck down." You were like, everyone who looked at the way they structured it, the way they classified net neutrality, and legal experts knew this was the wrong way of doing it. Before we get to how they can do it, I want to get your opinion on this. Why do you think they classified it this way? I mean, what was the logic? I mean, do you think they might have known that it probably was going to get struck down? What was the logic of them trying to classify it as the way they did?
Well, this dates way back to the good old days of the George W. Bush administration. Mm-hmm. And at that time, the chairman at the FCC was a guy by the name of Michael Powell. He's the son of the former Secretary of State Colin Powell, who is of a somewhat libertarian bent, and he decided in 2002 that he was going to restructure the agency's authority to classify broadband access. You got to bear with me here; it does get a little wonky, but to reclassify broadband access under Title I of the Communications Act instead of leaving it under Title II. Now, Title II is what's called a telecommunications service. Under that authority, the FCC had the ability to treat internet access like a common carrier service, which basically means that whenever you try to connect to anyone else on the network, the carrier cannot get in your way. So if I were to pick up my phone, for example, and try to call the pizza joint that's down the street, little mom and pop joint, and order a pizza, the telephone company couldn't redirect my call to Domino's because they had a special service. I mean, it seems fairly obvious that people who use telephones, that telephone company cannot do that. Well, Common Carrier also says that the internet service has to treat content in the same way. If you are to try to go to the Matthew Filipowicz Show online and listen to it, your internet service provider couldn't say, well, wouldn't you rather watch Fox News Channel or listen to CNN.com instead, and then try to prioritize that traffic in a way that would diminish access to your show. So this happened in 2002, and they restructured their authority in a way that created all of these problems. And what this new FCC chairman, Tom Wheeler, needs to do, and he's perfectly legally justified. The Supreme Court has decided that FCC can do this. Even in the court decision that came down on Tuesday, they said the FCC has the power to do this, is to reclassify broadband access under Title II, to reverse this Bush administration error and put it back from Title I into Title II.
So what would that, I mean, barring getting the political will, and we're going to talk, and we will talk about that, because that's obviously, the political pressure is very necessary to do this. How simple is it for the current chair, Tom Wheeler, to do this? Is it really just a matter of filling out a form or something like that? What is the actual process that he has to do in order to make this right?
Well, he has the authority to make a declaratory ruling, which is he could get up tomorrow morning and say, I'm going to make a declaratory ruling. We're going to reclassify under Title II. However, a lot of Republican members of Congress, the telecommunications lobby, the cable lobby, would go ballistic if he were to do that without putting in place a process of some sort where the public can comment, the industry can comment, they can weigh the comments and make a decision. So getting him just to make that decision is going to be a heavy lift. It is a political hot potato to reclassify. Mm-hmm. But if he were to make that decision, there is very likely to be a very drawn-out process of lobbying and public comments and public hearings to determine whether or not he should go in that direction. I think since this court ruling came down on Tuesday, you've seen this overwhelming consensus among people who've been watching this issue that the only way that we can really legally protect net neutrality, the most solid way we can do that is to reclassify. So if you want to protect the open internet, this is the course you have to take. However, in Washington, the phone and cable lobby is very politically influential. They give a lot of money to candidates. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars on lobbyists. That getting the FCC just to do the right thing is often a more onerous task than one would think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do we have any type of confidence in the chairman Wheeler? Any previous statements give any inclination of whether he feels that this is something that's important, or whether or not that reclassification is a path that he's looking for? Since the ruling has come down, what is the FCC's response, and specifically his response, been?
Well, he's been very politic in his statements, and he says things like, I support the open internet. It's been this amazing engine for economic growth, blah, blah, blah. But he has yet to go into the specifics about how he's going to actually protect the open internet. So he has been very politic thus far. Everybody's watching his comments very carefully, and they're doing this sort of analysis of what he actually means. But you should know that he also comes from a professional history as the chief lobbyist for the Wireless Association, which represent a lot of the wireless companies like Verizon and other carriers, and he also was the chief lobbyist for cable. So he comes out of a very pro-industry background. So that should give one reason for concern, obviously, as to whether or not he's going to decide in favor of net neutrality in the public interest, as opposed to simply doing what a lot of other people in Washington do, which is to bow down to industry.